Okay, so I'm in from the fields here again. Figured I might be able to slip in another little segment. Might be a mistake. Might end up being a throwaway, but some of the recent episodes I've been talking about what I'm calling the tuning fork effect. Whatever that's worth. It's the effect of the stock feeding back into the system. It's that the barrel and the stock work together, that they be affixed solidly. And one of the things that I touched on and didn't really get a chance to cover much is not, how do I put this? We talked about pillars, we talked about stiffness, we talked about how bench rest guys do it. And I really need to cover another way that I stiffen hunting stocks, because I think that it's important. I think it's innovative. I think it works really good. I've been out working on one. This is a stock of unknown origin. I inherited it because a guy came to me, wanted me to test something, and I told him my charge for testing and how much and how and why, and he had a thing he was investing money in. He had a thing he wanted checked out, and I said, you really don't want me to test that because the results that we get aren't going to be what you want. Long story short, he agreed to have me test this product, and I ended up with, they brought over some stuff, and one of the things that came over was this stock. The test, of course, went the way it went. I don't think he was happy with the results because he didn't ever pay me anything, but he did. I did end up stuck with this stock, and it's a cobbled together piece of crap. It was a right-hand stock that's been converted to left-hand. Somebody filled this area in here, and it's all munged up. I've got to fix it. I can see the bulge on my monitor screen here. So what we have here is a stock that's, it seems stout, it seems tight, and it's left-handed. So I ordered up a left-handed action, and I'm cobbling this thing together, trying to fix the problems inherent to the system. Fine bit of filth over here, Dennis. But the stock was kind of set up for Remington, but it didn't fit very well. So I'm going to put an Atlas. I ordered up an Atlas Tactical. We were talking in one of the segments not too long back about pillars and their functions and how they work and what they're for and whatever. So this is a stock that had, it seemed to have solid epoxy in this area. Like the person who built this stock, who laid this up, which by the way, it's a laid up stock. It's not something that's junk. It's not flexible. It's not Tupperware. It's just a roughed in piece of, it's a cobble to, no. Let me just back off in my picking on it. It was just, what I got was pretty rough. Nothing was aligned. It was crooked and twisted, and the stock itself is pretty straight. Whoever made it, I'll give them kudos. It is kind of disconcerting that it's cast off center, which means that it's harder to find the center line. But I found center line. I got everything moved over, and now I can drop an Atlas Tactical assembly into the top. Everything works. We're getting alignment. And on the bottom, I had to do some moving and some changing and so to bring it into plumb. But now we have, boy, that was right out of the camera. I'm so sorry about that. But now we have a chassis assembly. And I just spoke of something. I've chastised this system enough times. I call it the AI system. This bottom metal is, man, I hesitate to even say. It's one of the ones that I like of this type of bottom metal. I have a sign on the wall, can't read it from here, and I'll refer to it often. It's the concept that the person who learns how to do the work will always have a job. Whereas the person who learns why will always be his boss. That's why it's important to me to always know why, to always have a reason. I don't just go out, if I'm fishing, I step up on the bank elbow to elbow with 17 other guys and I look around and they're all using sluggos. I'm not going to put on a sluggo and start casting along with everybody else. That's not at all what I want to be known as. I'm a fish catcher. I'm a fisherman. I find an edge. It's the same way with these guns. To go out and build guns the way everybody else does doesn't excite me at all. When I did that, I had other people who are better machinists than myself and who do this for a living do my work. It wasn't until I got into a situation where I wanted to build a bunch of stuff that nobody wanted to touch. Nobody wanted to, they're like, you're crazy, dude. We don't even want to dink with your stuff. That I started back into doing my own work. So that's really where I'm at now. But this is an interesting thing. If I could find out a way to get a magazine to work in these stupid AI bottom metal assemblies, I have a bunch of them. I will buy, I'm a sucker for every one of these that doesn't have a big pecker hanging off here to hook on the brush. So many of these have this great knobby fish hook hanging off here, and the next thing you know, you're walking through the woods, you're actually out doing something instead of tactical and around on the range showing your buddies your cool new gun. You take it out and use it, and this big hangy stick that hangs clear down to here hooks your clothes, hooks your hands, hooks everything. These tactical guns, I got to say this one more time because I posted a picture of a tactical gun one time on the inner tube and a guy came on and said that looks like 13 pounds of fish hooks. And that's exactly what it is. Most of these are stupid and they have a big hanging down lever here. Why? Because people generally, in my world, form follows function. In most people's world, the camo they wear, the glasses they buy, the shoes that are on their feet, and the gun that they carry are a fashion statement. They're nothing to do with function. So functionally, I'm a sucker for this. Because I found a use for this bottom metal, I'm a sucker for all the types that have a smooth or a recessed, or I would call this an Oberndorf lock, but I don't know that that's correct according to this. I've got some that I've got on the sides, I've got some that are push button, but in all cases there's stuff that will not hook on the brush. Alright? So this is another one, but I built a few of these guns back in the day. Back when I designed the .338 Macallan round, I was looking for ways to stiffen the stock. I bought a special order Manners T3, T5, T something or another stock. Believe me, this is not a Manners stock, so don't use this. They do something called a triple overlay in this magazine area because I was building a hunting gun for a guy. .338 Macallan, huge recoil impulse, huge flex on the assembly, 13-pound gun as I recall, 14, 16, heavy, extended forearm. To stiffen this area up, I got it in this overbuild. Manners does an overbuild. They recognize the problem. See, this is the beauty. There are a few companies out there. Manners is one. Kelbley's is another. I'll stop there. There are people that recognize the problems and fix them. Stiller is another one. Back when Stiller was really involved with his actions. Some of the first actions I bought that made me happy were early Predators and Tacks, double pinned Picatinny rails, hanger brackets. They were smooth, they were everything. He was one of the first to start melaniting back when I was begging people to melanite actions because nothing disgusts me worse than paying thousands of dollars for a setup and hitting that bolt with my palm and it locking up tight. Stainless on stainless. Just drives me insane. So anyway, these companies that innovate, these companies that come up with fixes for the various problems, I support. In the designing and the building of the McCallum, I had a bunch of hurdles to overcome because my goal was to get a 3,000 foot per second, 300 grain bullet. Understand, this is a big case. I want to push a 300 grain slug up close to 3,000 feet per second. Tons and tons of generated energy, tons of flex in the system. So I ordered a Manners custom, and I waited. This is the reason I keep trying to come up with fixes that I can do here on my own, so that somebody says, hey, I'd like something built, I can build it in a month instead of taking 2 years to wait for each part of the cycle. So Manners, recognizing this problem, offer something called an overbuild, in which they layer more layers of carbon fiber on this area. I think 3. Please, you folks at Manners, don't castigate me if I'm wrong on this, but Manners does a build-up or an overlay where they stiffen. It incrementally widens this, but carbon fiber cloth and resin are not very thick. So this area is strengthened. Well, that was fine, and the gun was okay. But somewhere around that time I got the idea, because this particular guy wanted the AI style bottom metal. He wanted the capacity. Once I had a piece of this in my hot, sweaty little hands, I realized I can rough this all up with a Dremel tool. I can grind this all up, epoxy it in place forever, evermore, and this aluminum box is going to tremendously strengthen this area. So that's why I often refer to these as a chassis. I in fact do use them quite often now to strengthen stocks that I don't feel have enough reinforcement or strength in this area. Because no matter what, you take this, boy, here I am out of the camera again. This is terrible. Let me go back down. I did not know that. So, chassis system. I'm looking at the system, and instead of... boy, I have messed this segment up. I hope it's even watchable. So, during the course of this, I think I was holding it up when I was talking about the strengthening in this area. Anyway, Manners does something called an overmold, where they thicken, they add some extra layers of carbon fiber in this area to strengthen it against twisting and flexing. After building this big 338, having one of these in my hand, I realized I could rough it all up, glue it in there, and that aluminum box would dramatically stiffen this area. And it does work. I've now chassis dozens of these. I call it chassising because done this way, you don't just bed this in so that it's removable. You put it in there and it stays there forever. But it does dramatically stiffen the assembly. And this one, of course, has pillars in it. I've added pillars, lined them up. The work still has to be done as far as fitting it. But this is one that I'm going to go ahead and chassis, glue this bottom metal in. This, whatever it is, Oberndorf maybe is what I would call it. I talked through all this earlier, and I might have had it down out of the camera, I'm not sure, because I had the camera in a screwed up place. So sorry about that, I'm not very good at it, but I just wanted to show how one of these bottom metal assemblies, properly roughed and properly set up into the stock assembly, put it up there backwards of course, this can actually act as a stiffener in a little stock. So one of the things that I'll do, for instance, Macmillan sells a bunch of lightweight hunting stocks that are much skinnier, slimmer through this area than this particular stock is. And they are actually, they're not Tupperware weak, like you can't flex them by hand. But on some of those, I take these assemblies, rough them up dramatically, glue them in place, they flush out nicely, they look beautiful, and they stiffen that stock tremendously. The only downside, and it's a big one, is the fact that small magazines for these don't exist. There's a few people trying it, there's a little of this and a little of that, but bottom line is the magazines for these are retarded. I actually sometimes balance my firearms so that instead of carrying here, you put a heavy enough barrel that you carry here. And it's a terrifying way to get your hand out from this big hang down scrotum of a magazine box. But what else are you going to do? Magazine boxes are not meant to hang down. If you need 19 rounds in your elk rifle, you got a problem. You got all kinds of other issues than, you know, it's like these high cap 20 round 9mm. They've never made any sense to me. Stop bringing a pop gun to a gunfight, you'll be fine. You know, grab a 45, you only need 1 round. Remember, this thing is called Opinions by Al. Let's be really straight here. I do share my opinions. So, that said, there's a place for these, and I'm hoping, asking, looking, always in the market for a better magazine for these AI style boxes. But in the meantime, the AI style box can be used to stiffen up an otherwise not so stiff stock, still be able to load ammunition in from the bottom, and it's a way to overcome the weakness that occurs in here in my quest, in our quest for accuracy, in taking high recoil impulse rounds, adapting them to a system. I've said this in some of my earliest of early videos. Back when we started fishing big fish that weighed hundreds of pounds, we had to learn all over how to do our knots. We found out that all of the knots that we knew, all of the standard fishing knots, were just garbage when subjected to a heavy load. We had to build knots, we had to build splices, we had to learn about things like the Palomar knot. Not the Palomar knot, forget that I ever said that. The Palomar knot's a piece of crap. There's a Bimini twist, big monstrous Bimini twist, which is a way of making a loop in a line that's used for offshore fishing, where you're fishing these hundreds of pound fish that are running 20-30 miles an hour and burning out your drag for days. The Bimini twist was one that we started with, but then a bunch of snells and nail knots, and I digress on this, well, first of all, because I can. I don't care if you're interested or not. I'm explaining that big problems require big answers sometimes, and it takes a bit to figure some of these things out. This problem of the big recoil impulse in a wimpy little conventional carry type stock is real, and it's big, and we are dealing with it. This is and one of the cheapest, easiest ways to all of you out there that want to do your own work. Buy yourself one of these, chassis it into that stock, grind this with a Dremel tool, epoxy it up in there, let it become part and parcel of your stock, and it will dramatically stiffen this area. Get the tuning fork working between the forend and the barreled action assembly, and it's kind of a, how do I say this, not a cheap fix, but it's a way to approach the problem. We're trying to do it in other ways, because frankly I don't like these AI style magazines until somebody comes up with some 2-rounders or some 3-rounders. 2-rounders is what we want. 2 down and 1 up is enough for any situation. You know, we're not again, we don't want to get into the ethics or the methodology of hunting. There's people who say the same thing about single shots and say, problem is you can't make an accurate single shot, so it's no good at all. And the other problem is that for long range shooting, you have to take a ranging shot, so you need to have a couple down. You have to shoot a ranging shot just to find out what the wind's doing and make the animal stop and look around, then move over and plonk, put them down, and then have a follow-up shot. And then hopefully you're in a situation where if you do need more, you can swap out a magazine. But that's my rant about the fact that I think we need some 2-round magazines built for these things. But unfortunately, the buying public, the same buying public that sucks up the HMR and won't touch an HM, the Mach 2 series, of 17s. The 17 Mach 2 is a wonderful, wonderful cartridge. The 17 HMR is a piece of crap in my opinion. But because it's a little faster than the 17 Mach 2, the buying public gravitates to the HMR at the expense of the Mach 2 in the same way that they'll gravitate to a Magnum. Just put the name Magnum on it and it's going to sell. It's going to be cool. It's going to be all like that. Accuracy doesn't even enter into it. So now what we're trying to do is come up with, and we're succeeding. I'm succeeding. I can right now build Magnum guns that shoot 1/4 minute, which is fantastic. But we're going to try to share some of the techniques for doing that.